The NFL recently just had their annual coaches photo, and I thought it would be a good time today to rank every single head coach going into the 2025 NFL season. So we are going to drop all 32 NFL coaches into a tier list today. We have elite, pretty good, average. They're a new head coach and they have high expectations going into year number one. A new coach and they have low expectations. And then we have coaches that are on the hot seat currently. You can take into account a bunch of different things when you are evaluating a head coach. And obviously, they're not somebody that really goes out there and play. They can't make a tackle. They can't make a block for you. It's all about their schemes and can they put their players the best positions overall to succeed. And that could also be hiring offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators as well. Some head coaches are a pipeline and have a very deep coaching tree for next head coaches. Some do not. And obviously we can have playoff success and all that into this as well. So we are going to start off with Mike McDaniel of the Miami Dolphins. He was obviously somebody that has came over from that Washington coaching tree under Mike Shanahan, has spent time in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan, and then recently got the head coaching job from the Dolphins a couple years ago. He really turned this offense around in year number one and year number two with Tua Tagovailoa. But last year was a disaster for this team. People thought this offense was getting a little bit stale, and it was just something that now we've seen before. He came into Miami, they had a winning record by one game in year number one, and then broke out pretty much into a team that kind of choked away the division late in that 2023 season. And then I don't know if I want to put him on the hot seat. I think there is a chance he could be let go if this team is disappointing in 2025. I would just say right now he is an average head coach. He's a good offensive mind, and I wonder if he's just going to be better suited as an offensive coordinator for his career. Somebody like Matt Nagy we're seeing in Kansas City, although maybe not the best offensive coordinator example. Maybe somebody like Cliff Kingsbury in Washington. But we'll see how he's going to look in year number 4 for the Miami Dolphins because they haven't won a playoff game with him as their head coach yet. Aaron Glenn, the new head coach of the New York Jets, coming over as the defensive coordinator from the Detroit Lions. I'm going to say he's just a new coach and has low expectations. The Jets have a very low win total projected for the 2025 season. And if he can get 7 to 8 wins out of Justin Fields and can showcase a good 2025 draft class with those rookies, this team is going to be heading in the right direction. Maybe we see bounce back years from Breece Hall and Sauce Gardner. Maybe Garrett Wilson can just kind of keep progressing as a wide receiver one in this league. And it's really just seeing how Justin Fields looks as this franchise quarterback. Because if there's a foundation there, if there's just a glimmer of hope, Aaron Glenn is going to be, I guess, a beloved head coach in New York, because these Jets fans, I mean, they're used to so much disappointment. And it hasn't worked out with basically every single head coach since Rex Ryan, sadly. So next up, we have Sean McDermott of the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to throw him in the pretty good tier from now. A lot of people thought that the Bills were going to take a step back last year, and he brings this team to the AFC Championship game, beating the Baltimore Ravens in the playoffs in doing so, and was close to beating the Kansas City Chiefs yet again. I think what's holding him back from being an elite head coach is winning the AFC and beating Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. I don't want to put too many coaches in the pretty good tier, so I could end up dropping him towards the end of this. And I think usually at the end of tier list, sometimes I like to change some of these tiers as well if I feel like I could change some things. I think McDermott could have ended up on the hot seat if they weren't that good last year, but I do think Brandon Beane has done a very good job giving him the supporting cast and allowing him to just maximize this roster with some financial restrictions they've had over the last few years. I think Mike Vrabel is a pretty good head coach. I know he's new, and I think he's going to have high expectations in New England. Now, I don't think that's going to be directly correlated to the win total. I think it's more so if Drake May takes any bit of a step back or just does not take a step forward in 2025, he's going to be met with some criticism, and maybe that's going to be the hiring of Josh McDaniels. But I just think that Vrabel has higher expectations than Aaron Glenn, just because it's a team that's won in the past and they have a very good history in New England, and he's been a proven good head coach in the NFL in Tennessee. I'd be okay bumping him up here, and maybe that's fine with me if I didn't want to throw him in the new and high expectations tier. But I'm just going to keep him in there for now, and if I feel like the pretty good tier is not as deep as I would have liked it to be, I think we could throw them in there. And obviously these guys, I mean, it's directly correlated with how their quarterback is going to be as well. Maybe outside this guy, Mike Tomlin, who gets a 500 record every year, every single year of his career, but he doesn't win many playoff games, or at least he hasn't as of late. And yes, the Steelers haven't had the best quarterback play in the world, and I think that's on Kevin Colbert, and that's on Amar Khan, who have not really had the best contingency plan or the succession plan for Ben Roethlisberger, and they've gone through Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett and Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and is it going to be Aaron Rodgers this year? I don't know if I want to put Mike Tomlin in the elite head coach tier anymore. At one point, he was definitely an elite head coach. I think he could just be a floor raiser every single year. And yes, he could bring a bottom 10 quarterback to the playoffs every single year. They've had a good defense, but he's promoted basically no offensive or defensive coordinators to head coaching positions in the league. They fumbled the Matt Canada offensive coordinator job over the last few years, which I think derailed Kenny Pickett's development as that offensive coordinator. I think Arthur Smith is fine. Terrell Austin hasn't really been the best defensive coordinator in the world. And I think it's also more so on the front office than the coaching. But Tomlin is a very good coach. He's a leader, and he's somebody you want to play for, that we've seen plenty of players come out and say they want to play for Mike Tomlin at some point in their careers. Zach Taylor, I think I'm going to throw him an average. I mean, this team went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago, but we haven't seen them reach that again. And yes, they did lose in the AFC Championship game one year in that 2022 season to the Kansas City Chiefs, but I don't know if he's ever going to be on the hot seat. We know the Brown family has pretty much never moved on from head coaches early in their tenures, as Marvin Lewis was basically there for 15 years and he couldn't win a playoff game at any point there in Cincinnati. So I think Zach Taylor is probably an average right now, but I do wonder if there's really a difference between him and Sean McDermott. Obviously, they have been blessed with having elite quarterbacks on their team. And John Harbaugh obviously has done it for a while as well. I know Ravens fans at some point, maybe right now they are sick of John Harbaugh as their head coach, but he's done a good job hiring offensive coordinators. I would say, yeah, Greg Roman didn't really work out towards the end of that tenure, but it looks like Todd Monken was a really good hire by him. The defensive coordinator taking a chance on Zachary Orr, I also think has been a fantastic job, or finding that talent and just kind of promoting him over time. And they've gotten the most out of Lamar Jackson with maybe not the best receiving core, or at times the best offensive line, and a very banged up team at some points as well. So I would say Harbaugh and Tomlin are pretty much in the same tier. The only difference is I think Tomlin does more with less, but Harbaugh is also like very lucky. He's got Lamar Jackson that he's able to coach. And yeah, Mike Tomlin doesn't really have that quarterback, but I also think Harbaugh has maximized Lamar Jackson. And I'm not sure if Lamar Jackson would be Lamar Jackson if he was in Pittsburgh. I think Kevin Stefanski is a good coach. I mean, he's won the Coach of the Year award twice, but he's just coaching the most dysfunctional organization in the NFL. Like, ownership, the Haslam Group just said, yeah, the Deshaun Watson trade was a massive mistake. And Watson is under contract as well, so I doubt he's ever going to play a snap for this team again. He's helped Joe Flacco reach them to the playoffs, and I know they did lose to the Texans that year, but Stefanski, like, even being the head coach for that Baker Mayfield team that beat the Steelers during Wild Card Weekend, I think he's a pretty good head coach. So I feel like this is going to be, I don't know, a very deep tier. We'll see this, because I think I'm going to have D'Amico Ryans there as well, who people thought should have won Coach of the Year over Stefanski 2 years ago. And I know Stroud maybe took a little bit of a step back in year number 2, and you could put some of the blame on Bobby Slovic. So I think this could be a big year for D'Amico Ryans, but he got another playoff victory against a team in the LA Chargers that everybody was taking the Chargers to beat the Texans. And I think he also gets a ton out of his group as well, and seems like he's a good leader in the locker room. So I don't know out of this group who I would bump up into the elite tier, because I feel like I'm going to have 5 guys there. But yeah, maybe I'm going to have like an above average tier as well, because I think Shane Steichen's probably on the hot seat over there in Indianapolis, and that could also be on Chris Ballard, the GM, and it seems like the Anthony Richardson experiment has not gone to plan, and they benched him last year, and I feel like it was such a high after year number 1, and I know Richardson got hurt, but Gardner Minshew and Steichen almost led this team to the playoffs in 2023, and then last year was pretty much a disaster. They went to Joe Flacco as the starting quarterback, they went back to Richardson, and they picked up Daniel Jones in the offseason. We're seeing the development of some guys be a little bit staggered. I know Pittman took a little bit of a step back. How does Adonai Mitchell look as a rookie? I think you could have expected a little bit more out of him, and I do think if this year is a disaster, Jim Irsay could end up firing Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard over there in Indianapolis. Liam Cohen, I would say, is new and has low expectations just because his predecessors there in Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson and Urban Meyer never really accomplished a lot. I know Urban Meyer is one of the worst coaching hires in NFL history, but Doug Peterson did help the Jaguars get a playoff victory and kind of got helped by Brandon Staley choking that playoff game a couple of years ago. He's going to be there with a new general manager in James Gladstone, as Trent Baalke is no longer there in Jacksonville. I think if this team wins 7 games, they're fine with that in 2025, as long as Trevor Lawrence can look like a top 10 quarterback next year. And if he does look like a top 10 quarterback next year, I feel like they're going to be a playoff team. I feel like those are pretty correlated, and we're going to see how he does. But it could be a Brian Callahan 2.0. We'll see. And speaking of Brian Callahan 2.0, he is definitely on the hot seat. Year 1 in Tennessee was kind of a disaster, and I thought he was going to get fired at the end of the year, which is kind of crazy because he was one of the best offensive minds on the market coming over from Cincinnati and leading that offense with Joe Burrow over the last few years. They move on from Mike Vrabel for Brian Callahan, and it was kind of a disaster last year. Rand Carthen, the GM, ended up getting fired. I do feel like if they are the worst team in the NFL again, or one of the worst teams, he's going to get fired, especially if Cam Ward does not have a productive rookie year. Andy Reid, yep, he's an elite head coach. That is pretty easy there. He's been the most successful coach in the NFL over the last 6 to 7 years, and definitely the most successful coach in the 2020s. It does help. He's playing with a generational talent in Patrick Mahomes, but he hasn't fumbled the development of Patrick Mahomes, and he's won 3 Super Bowls there in Kansas City and has gone to 2 others, losing to the Eagles and the Buccaneers. They make it to the AFC Championship game every year, and it does feel like they're losing talent left and right. Either it's Tyreek Hill, or it's Rashee Rice, Isaiah Pacheco, to injuries, suspensions, or they just end up getting traded, and they're still good every year. But Jerry Sneed moves on, and obviously he does have a good coordinator group. I don't know about Matt Nagy being good. Moving on from Eric Bieniemy, I think they've taken a little bit of a step back there, but Steve Spagnuolo just being one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. Like Jim Harbaugh, I kind of want to put him in pretty good. Like, I feel like I'm going to have to break up this tier in some way, shape, or form, but he brought the Chargers that had low expectations to the playoffs in year number 1. He seems like just kind of a football sicko that guys want to play for. He was a successful coach at Michigan towards the end, winning a national championship with the Wolverines a few years ago. I'm going to throw him in the pretty good tier. And like I said, I think this is going to be a deep tier, so we may end up dropping like some of these guys into average. Because if they're like my 15th ranked coach, they're going to be pretty much average, because Pete Carroll is probably a pretty good coach. Do I think like Pete Carroll in 2025 is going to be as good as Pete Carroll in 2015? Probably not, as he's one of the older coaches, the oldest coach in the NFL. So I don't know if I'm going to drop him to average. I feel like out of all these guys, I'd probably drop Sean McDermott to average, just because I feel like he was on the hot seat a year ago. It helps he has Josh Allen, and I think Bills fans, you can let me know if you think that is maybe a little bit disrespectful to him, because I do feel like I'm giving the respect to some of the veterans like Tomlin, both Harbaughs, and Pete Carroll. And Stefanski has won Coach of the Year twice. I know his team isn't good, but it's also not his fault at times, because I also think Sean Payton, is he an elite coach in 2025? Like, the Broncos had lower expectations than the Chargers in 2024, and they went to the playoffs. Yep, they got blown out in the wild card weekend to the Buffalo Bills, a team that was much better than them, but he got a lot out of Bo Nixon with no running game and not the best receiving court in the world. So I'm going to throw him in pretty good, but like I said, this tier is definitely going to get broken up into towards the end of this. Brian Daboll, he's on the hot seat there in New York. I was surprised he wasn't let go at the end of the 2024 season. I think it's more so been on Joe Schoen and them committing to Daniel Jones, because he won them a playoff game a couple years ago with Daniel Jones beating the Minnesota Vikings. It's just, yeah, that set them back a little bit, and they didn't fully lose out last year, so they missed out on one of the top quarterbacks in the 2024 draft, and we'll see how Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston is going to look like next year. I don't think Nick Sirianni's an elite coach, but all he's done in Philadelphia is just win. They lost to the Buccaneers in his first year during Wild Card Weekend, and then the next year, they go to the Super Bowl. They're one of the best teams in the NFL. They lose to the Chiefs in a game they almost won. Yeah, 2023 was a little bit of a down year, losing to Tampa Bay during Wild Card Weekend, but he wins the 2024 Super Bowl. He's gone to the Super Bowl half of his years in the NFL so far, coming over as the OC from Indianapolis. I gotta throw him in the pretty good tier. So like I said, this tier, it's going to get broken up a little bit. We got a lot of names in there. I feel like Dan Quinn, though, is an elite head coach. Or do I think he's pretty good? Like, I know Sirianni beat him in the playoffs, went to the Super Bowl, but when I think you're looking at the rosters and what they could do with their talent level, like, the Eagles have the best roster in the NFL because of what Howie Roseman has built through the draft, through free agency, through trades. But I do feel like if you gave them the same roster, I feel like I trust Dan Quinn to win me more games. And maybe I'm disrespecting the Super Bowl winning coach. Damn, like towards the end of this, pretty good. We got a lot here. So I think we're gonna insert the above average tier now, which I feel like I would definitely put McDermott in there. Do I put Zach Taylor? I think I may drop D'Amico Ryans. Oh, D'Amico's done actually, I think I'm gonna put Pete Carroll in there. I kind of want to put Tomlin in there, but I feel like that's disrespectful. All right, for now, we'll do this, and we'll see how we're going to end up changing it towards the end of this. We have first-year coach Brian Schottenheimer. I mean, it's unfair for him to have high expectations, but it's the Dallas Cowboys. They have objectively like a fine enough roster to make the playoffs next year with CD, Parsons, Dak, and some other guys on the squad, bringing back Osi Odigizua. Hopefully DeMar Irvin Overshown's going to be healthy next year. We'll see what they're going to do with pick 12 in the draft. I feel like you're just on the Dallas Cowboys. You're kind of the LA Lakers of the NFL. You're the New York Yankees. You're going to have high expectations every single year. And if this team won 5 or 6 games, close to that again in 2025, he could be on the hot seat. I know Jerry Jones likes these coaches to play out their current contracts, but I would say just because of the Dallas Cowboys and even the state of their roster, he's going to have higher expectations than Liam Cohen and Aaron Glenn in 2025. Like, I know Aaron Glenn also plays in a big market like Dallas, or coaches in a big market, but I just think it's more so Dallas having a much better roster, and I think has a chance to actually do something in the playoffs. We'll see. Next up, we do have Matt LaFleur. Kind of want to put him in elite. He's a pretty good coach, man. Like, he's done a phenomenal job with Aaron Rodgers. I know they haven't made it to the Super Bowl with him, but they're really good every single year, and he's developed Jordan Love. It feels like maybe it's also more so on the front office putting the pieces in place. Damn, trying to break up this tier is going to be so hard at the end of this. Kevin O'Connell, he's an elite head coach, 100%. One of the best offensive minds in the NFL. Won 14 games or so last year with the Minnesota Vikings with Sam Darnold as his quarterback. And yeah, JJ McCarthy was out for the year, pivots to Sam Darnold and gets the most out of him. I mean, allowing Brian Flores was a phenomenal defensive coordinator hire. I know a lot of that could also go on the front office, but it does feel like he is one of the best minds in the NFL. This is tough because, like, Dan Campbell feels like an elite head coach, right? Like, right now with this Lions team, which is a pretty good roster, and that's also on Brad Holmes, the GM, I think I'm going to put him an elite head coach right now. So, Ben Johnson, I would say he's got high expectations in Chicago. He was the best offensive coordinator on the market, turned down jobs in the past from Carolina, from Washington. He demanded a high salary. He gets paid a very high salary for being a first-year head coach there in Chicago. He's got Caleb Williams. He's got a really good roster that Ryan Poles built through the trenches in free agency. We'll see if they land in Ashton Genty with the 10th overall pick. I'm also debating if I want to put Liam Cohen in high expectations just because, like, he got so much money, and the scandal, or just like kind of what happened, the scenario there in Tampa Bay where he said he wasn't going to leave and then he leaves and they make him one of the highest paid first year head coaches in the league. I kind of want to bump him up to high expectations. Dave Canales, like, I think I'm going to throw him in an average head coach right now. Like, I wouldn't say he's the best head coach in the world, but he's far from the worst head coach right now. And I think the steps from Bryce Young in year number 2 were great. He hasn't been dealt the best roster in his just first year there, but it was so much better than what it was in 2023 compared to 2024. And as this roster gets better, I think he can climb up the ranks. Kellen Moore definitely has low expectations. He's inheriting one of the worst rosters in the NFL. I'm afraid for him, he's going to be a bridge coach, and I hope they don't use him as a scapegoat if the Saints are one of the worst teams in the next 2 years and he ends up getting fired. And maybe he's going to be just a lifelong OC in this league, spending some time in LA, Dallas, and Philadelphia. We'll see, but I do think he's pretty much somebody that has low expectations in year 1, and I think the Saints are in a total rebuild at the moment. I would say that Todd Bowles is pretty much an average head coach. I think it's helped a ton that he's had Liam Cohen under him. He's had Dave Canales under him as well. Comes from the Arians tree, at least this time here in Tampa. Didn't really work out in New York as the head coach there. He's done better in Tampa Bay, but I feel like I'm taking all these head coaches above him over him. I would say Raheem Morris probably pretty average. I mean, not the largest sample size in his career as a head coach, because when he was the Bucs coach 15 years ago, he was thrown into a terrible situation. He made the most out of it and then was scapegoated over there as well. He's worked up his reputation again as a DC over time, and then comes from LA to Atlanta. And in like a situation which was tough because of the Kirk Cousins situation. You draft Michael Penix in the top 10. They were fine last year, maybe a little disappointing, but I do think he's not on the hot seat by any means. Next up, we do have Jonathan Gannon, who I do think is going to be on the hot seat in Arizona. I would also put him in the average tier as well, but I do think if this is another year where you don't see maybe development of Kyler Murray in this offense taking a step forward. I know he's a defensive-minded guy, but I do feel like the Cardinals have kind of been just the same team since he's been hired, just for 2 years. It's a smaller sample size, but I do think, yeah, maybe the Sirianni disciples are on the hot seat this year. I mean, Kyle Shanahan, say what you want about him, I do think he's an elite head coach. I mean, he's had such an impressive background, succeeding in Houston, succeeding in Washington, succeeding in Cleveland for a year with Brian Hoyer and that disaster with ownership and Johnny Manziel and Josh Gordon over there. And then he ends up leaving and he ends up going to Atlanta. I know that Super Bowl is always going to be tainted on his resume, but he went to 2 Super Bowls there with Jimmy G and Brock Purdy in San Francisco. I do think he's a better head coach than Dan Campbell. I know this roster's tough right now, and I know you can maybe give some credit to John Lynch. Shanahan came before John Lynch over there in San Fran. I still think he's an elite coach. I know last year was a disaster, but there were so many injuries to that last year's Niners team. Next up, we have Mike Macdonald, who I don't think, I think year 1 was fine for him. I think the defense maybe wasn't as good as they would have liked it to, but this was one of the worst constructed offensive lines in the league. I'm intrigued to see how year number 2 is going to look. He's one of the younger head coaches in the league still, and he's a defensive-minded guy, but I'm very intrigued to see how this team is going to look with no DK Metcalf, with JSN being the full-time wide receiver 1, and Sam Darnold as that team's quarterback going forward. And then lastly, Sean McVay, easily an elite coach in this league. Won a Super Bowl a couple years ago, one of the brightest minds in the NFL. Still one of the more younger coaches in the NFL as well. Damn, do I really think that there's that many pretty good head coaches in this league? Like, I feel bad putting Sirianni a tier down just because he won the Super Bowl. But like I said, he was gifted probably one of the more talented rosters. But hey, he didn't mess it up. And this team had miles better coordinators than they did in 2023. So it's just really tough to see who I want to drop from this tier. I feel like Stefanski, I know he's won 2 Coach of the Years, but I think I'm going to drop him to the above average tier based off all these guys. I think, like, I just got to respect Sirianni for the Super Bowl. And if I was going to drop 3 guys into above average, who do I drop? Like, you guys got to let me know in the comments who you would drop. Do I drop Jim Harbaugh just because it's been 1 year? He was great last year, but maybe I need to see a little bit more in his second stint in the NFL to bump him up. And then do I drop DeMeco Ryans as well? Just because I think LaFleur has done it a little bit longer than DeMeco Ryan. Same with pretty much everybody else here. And Quinn has had multiple head coaching jobs and did succeed in Atlanta. I know they did lose the Super Bowl. And obviously Peyton, Tomlin, and John Harbaugh have extensive track records in the NFL. So this is what I'm going to leave it at. You can let me know what you think down below. Yeah, this was very, very tough to do. And like I said, it's really hard to evaluate head coaches because they're not the ones out there throwing the ball, catching the ball, tackling people, rushing the passer. They're just trying to implement schemes and can put their teams in the best position to succeed. But sometimes it comes down on ownership. It comes down on coordinators. It comes down on the front office, putting the pieces around them and giving them the best chance to succeed. So yeah, let me know what you agree with or disagree with down below. Like I said, that was very tough to do. And if you guys did enjoy this, I would appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.